Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, today we're diving into something truly wild. We're unpacking a fascinating narrative that sits right at the intersection of a gripping true crime case and some deeply rooted supernatural lore. We're heading to an obscure rural location in Rajasthan to look at the mystery of Bairavpur Station.
I want you to just think about this for a second. Why would a village completely abandon its own railway station for 70 years? Literally no train stopping, no passengers waiting, just this crumbling platform totally left to the elements. Well, what's incredibly compelling about this is that the answer to this decades-old mystery wasn't dug up by historians. No, it was forcefully awakened by a modern-day crime, this horrific event that unfolded just 5 or 6 years ago. To figure out the forgotten history of the station, we actually have to start with the terrifying ordeal of a modern young woman.
And that brings us to our modern-day protagonist, Radhika. So Radhika had formed this deep, unbreakable connection with a boy from her village, but there was a major complication. They were from different castes. In her village, the caste system was still strictly observed, and an intercaste romance was viewed by the older generation as a severe social offense. Her father, a very traditional man, absolutely refused to accept it. Realizing he couldn't just talk them out of it, he made a drastic decision to force them apart.
Things escalated fast. To separate them, her dad executed a really strict 3-step plan. First, he ordered Radhika to pack her bags immediately. Second, to stop her from fighting back or causing a scene, he lied. He told her that her uncle, who lived hundreds of kilometers away, was desperately sick and needed them right away. But his real intention was step 3, leave their village forever. He wanted to keep her far away until he could marry her off within their own caste. These deeply ingrained social dynamics forced Radhika and her father onto a fateful train ride. They thought they were running away, but they were actually running straight into a nightmare.
The tension builds over this incredibly stressful 14-hour journey. Almost right after boarding the morning train, 3 local thugs spot Radhika and start stalking them. All through the afternoon, these boys are just hovering, waiting for an opening. Now, Radhika's father is smart. He senses their dark intentions, scolds them, and actually shoos them away. They retreat, sure, but they don't actually leave the train. As night falls, the carriage slowly empties out. By late evening, it's mostly deserted, and the father, who is just exhausted, finally falls asleep. Then, right at midnight, the train makes a very rare halt at the desolate, abandoned Bairavpur station.
What happens next is just a terrifying, rapid ambush. Radhika needs to use the washroom, and she makes a fateful decision. She sees her dad is in a deep sleep, decides not to wake him, and steps out of the seating area. Waiting right outside the washroom are those 3 thugs. Before she can even get a scream out, they grab her. They cover her mouth, pull her by her hair, and aggressively drag her off the train, right into the pitch-black darkness of the abandoned station. The train pulls away, leaving her stranded in the middle of nowhere with her attackers, while her father sleeps on, completely unaware.
Now, here's where things take a bizarre turn. Bairavpur had been suffering through a severe, parched drought for 4 solid months, literally not a drop of rain. But exactly as the attackers drag Radhika away, intending to commit a horrific crime, this inexplicable anomaly occurs. A violent, blinding thunderstorm and dust storm just erupts out of nowhere. The wind is howling, heavy rain starts lashing down on the old platform, and the attackers are instantly blinded by all this aggressive dirt flying into their eyes. This sudden environmental chaos gives Radhika the tiny, split-second window she needs to break free and dive behind a rusted station board. So she's hiding behind that board, absolutely terrified, peering through the violent dust storm, and she witnesses something that completely defies all logic. According to her official testimony, she sees a supernatural entity. It was the spirit of a woman, dressed in a traditional red suit, a salwar kameez. But she wasn't walking, she was hovering, literally floating in midair above the platform. And the 3 attackers, who were still totally blinded and disoriented by the storm, were now completely at the mercy of whatever this entity was. The vengeance that followed was swift and honestly horrifying. The entity grabbed the first boy by his collar, waited for an approaching train that wasn't scheduled to stop, and dropped him directly onto the tracks. For the second boy, the spirit physically tore the heavy metal hands off the old station clock and stabbed him in the neck repeatedly. And the third boy, grabbed by the throat and strangled while being hoisted up into the air. What makes this absolutely chilling is that when the police eventually searched the station, they found the 3 bodies in the exact brutal conditions that Radhika described. When the police and her frantic father finally found Radhika cowering in the bushes behind that board, she was physically unharmed by the boys, but her mind was completely shattered. The shock of the abduction, that insane storm, and witnessing those brutal executions pushed her right into a catatonic state. It took 45 agonizing days, 45 days of medical care and absolute silence before she could finally speak and share this unbelievable testimony with her father and the local police. Naturally, when she finally tells this story, the initial reaction from the cops and her dad is total disbelief. They figured the trauma had just severely affected her mind. But the turning point comes when the village elders of Bhairpur hear her account. We're talking about men in their 90s and over 100 years old. When they hear the specific details, especially the exact location and her description of the entity, they realize she isn't crazy at all. They step forward to finally unveil the dark, hidden history of Bhairpur Station, a secret that had been buried for over 7 decades. As the elders finally explained, this station was closed to bury a dark secret. It wasn't shut down because of a lack of funds or some change in train routes. The narrative shifts right here from a modern ghost story to a tragic, historical cover-up orchestrated by the most powerful people in the region. The sudden abandonment of the station wasn't logistics, it was a desperate attempt to hide a scandalous crime. To really understand why this cover-up happened, we have to look at the village's social landscape 70 years ago. Back then, the village was ruled by the Talkers, a dominant upper caste group. According to the historical context, they held all the wealth, the power, and they enforced incredibly strict social and caste hierarchies. Maintaining their honor, their izzat, was more important than anything else. Any violation of these social rules, especially by their own family members mingling with lower castes, was met with absolute brutal intolerance. Which brings us to the events of 70 years ago, and a girl we'll call the first Radhika. Remarkably, this young woman from the powerful Tucker family shared the exact same name as our modern protagonist. She was a college student who formed a profound, completely forbidden connection with a boy named Mohan. But Mohan was an orphan from a poor, lower caste background who worked in the fields. Even though Mohan initially ignored her out of sheer terror for his life, knowing the deadly consequences of even looking at a Tucker girl, Radhika's persistence won him over. Their romance blossomed in secret, directly challenging the severe rules of the village. Of course, you know how it is, secrets in small villages just do not last. Word of their romance reached the Thakur family. Enraged by the perceived stain on their honor, the family planned to quietly murder Mohan. The first Radhika discovered this plot and convinced Mohan to elope. Under the cover of darkness, they made a desperate dash for the Bhairpur railway station to catch a train and escape to a new life. But they were betrayed by a servant. An armed mob of Thakur men ambushed the young couple right there on the platform. Without hesitation, they shot and killed Mohan right in front of Radhika's eyes. And the tragedy didn't end there. Heartbroken, and having just watched the murder of the man she loved, the historical Radhika grabbed a gun from one of her family's guards and took her own life right there on the platform. So now, the Tucker family was faced with a massive scandal, their own daughter dead in a forbidden elopement. To protect their pride, they decided to completely erase the event. They dug a massive grave near the platform, buried both Radhika and Mohan together, and used their immense political power to shut the Bhairpur station down permanently. For 70 years, no one was allowed to speak a word of it. When you look at it, the parallels across 70 years are absolutely undeniable. A modern Radhika, forced away from the boy she cared for, finds herself under attack at an abandoned station. At that exact same location, the historical Radhika died 7 years earlier, trying to escape with the man she loved. The village elders concluded that the spirit of the first Radhika, trapped at that station for decades, recognized the plight of a modern girl who shared not only her name, but her exact same struggle. She intervened, using terrifying supernatural force to protect the modern Radhika from the exact fate she herself had suffered. Which leaves us with this final, haunting thought. By saving a girl who mirrored her own tragic past, did the spirit of the first Radhika finally find the peace that was violently stolen from her 70 years ago? Or does she still linger at the abandoned Bhairpur station, a guardian of the forgotten platform, still waiting for a train that will never come? It's a striking reminder of how deeply human emotions like love, grief, and the demand for justice can echo through time. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this deep dive sparked your curiosity to always look a little closer at the hidden histories around us.